Welcome to Life Beyond B.S, where we ditch the belief systems and the bullshit and get real about life. Here it's about awareness, choice, and creating joy that actually lasts. No perfection, just honest talk and powerful change. I'm your host, Heather McNally, and let's get into it. Hi, and welcome to Life Beyond B.S, the space where we stop believing everything we've been told and start questioning the stories that keep us small and learn how to live from alignment instead of that autopilot that our subconscious shows us. I'm your host, Heather McNally, and I am a life coach, a speaker, and an author. And I am so glad you're here. And I'm just so glad to be here. This podcast, it's not about perfection. I don't believe in perfection. Okay. It's about awareness and courage and freedom that comes when you finally call out your own BS, your belief systems, and yeah, the bullshit too. The bullshit that has been put into our heads that society tells us that we need to live by. And I don't know about you, but I'm done with that. So let's talk about the name for a second, Life Beyond BS. So here's the truth that every single one of us is carrying around these invisible scripts that tell us who we are, who we're supposed to be, how to show up in every situation, and if we're good enough, what is good enough. Some of those beliefs were handed to us by family, sometimes well-meaning adults, teachers, friends, all the different people in your life, and some by fear. And our brain is just trying to help us survive. And that's what it's doing is our brain is searching to see, okay, how do I survive in this world? So the beautiful thing is that we can unlearn the BS and we can actually rewrite the story. So that's what this podcast is about. And we're going to be going there all over the place. We're going to be living beyond the conditioning, beyond the noise in our heads and outside of our heads that is trying to get into our heads, and beyond the limits that just no longer serve you. So I'm going to be doing solo episodes and guest episodes, and I'm really excited to have great conversations, complete authenticity, real talk to help you reconnect with your values, your awareness, and your power to choose, because that's your superpower. Once you understand how your mind, your emotions, and your energy work together, you start to realize that you've always had that power to shift your own life. You just needed someone to hand you the flashlight to see it. And honestly, that's why I started this, because I've lived through my own version of the BS, the belief systems, the bullshit, the stories, the expectations, the patterns that told me to stay small or to settle. And one day I realized, one big day, but I have quite a few moments that I realized I could choose differently. And everything in my life started to change. So if you're ready to live with more intention, more truth, and a lot less BS, you're in the right place. Welcome to Life Beyond BS. So let's get started. Before we go a little bit deeper into my why and what this is all about, let me just tell you a little bit about me. I am a proud 53-year-old woman. Many people are thinking about retiring at my age, or like, okay, when is it coming? When is it coming? And they've got that countdown calendar, and that's great. But for me, at 50 years old, I decided this is my business. This is what I'm going to do. This is my passion. And I jumped in. Oh boy, did I jump in. I'm married to my husband, and actually, the day that this is dropping, which is today, October 13th, tomorrow is our 30th wedding anniversary. And the next day, the 15th, is actually our 35th year together. So I'm feeling ancient saying that. We've got two sons. They're 23 and 19, and they are no longer living at home. They've both moved out, and so I'm an empty nester. So what better thing to do than start my own business and start a podcast and everything. I'm a proud fur baby mom. I've got three dogs and two cats, and I love them all. They are my babies now. And if you are an animal person, you know how it is. Like you leave the house and you're like, bye, babies. And you come back home and they greet you with so much love. And there's just true love there. They're there. They're so happy you're there. And it's just kind of a great feeling to walk into. I do have a bachelor's degree in psychology. And after getting my degree, I worked full time in a couple of the big Boston hospitals and one of the big Boston universities as in administration. And once we had our first child, who is now 23, so 23 years ago, I and my husband, we decided that I was going to be a stay-at-home mom. And I am so grateful for that opportunity. And yeah, that doesn't mean everything was easy and roses and wonderful. If you have kids, you know being a mom is the hardest job there is. And if you have loved ones that you've had to care for, you know that that is a job in and of itself. So I was lucky to be a stay-at-home mom. Living with one paycheck isn't always the easiest thing, but we made it work because it was our dream and our goal. So why this podcast and why now? I mentioned that today is October 13th. It is a Monday, and this podcast will be dropping on Tuesdays typically, but this date had a real meaning for me. So, the meaning for me with this podcast is my mom, who went through a very long illness, and that'll be coming up in other episodes. She was not just my mom, she was my best friend, but she was my patient. And the significance is that on October 13th in 2016, 9 years ago today, my mom passed away. And instead of looking at this as a sad date, I'm looking at this as honoring my mom and the relationship I had with her and the choices that she made in her life and the choices that I'm making in my life based on all my life experience, the education, the relationships, everything in my life. And that's what I want to share with you. And I want you to know that going through everything that I've experienced in my life, though you may not have experienced the same things, you can see parts of yourself in my story, and you're definitely going to see parts of yourself in the stories of the amazing guests that I bring on. And I've already recorded one of those episodes. It's gold. This isn't just a project for me, this is my heart. Back when my mom was passing, so at the age of 50, I decided, okay, I'm going to start a blog. And I had been thinking about it throughout the experience with my mom of her illness and her subsequent lung transplant and all the things that happened, the roller coaster, the dynamics of family, everything that happened. I learned so much. And I kept saying, I would post things on Facebook and my friends would message me and say, you have such an empowering story and you have such real tips and your voice is so real and raw and it's inspiring. So I thought, well, maybe I'll write a blog and it'll help somebody. And here we are. I now have a business and I'm starting a podcast, which I'll be honest with you, terrifies me. But at the same time, I've been appearing as a guest on podcasts, and the conversations that I've been having have been so phenomenal. I have met so many incredible people, and I just love it. And at the heart of life, it's about connection and meaning. So that's what I want to bring to you. Okay. This podcast is my way of taking everything I've lived through, everything I've learned, and giving it back to you as hope, as possibility, and as truth. You're going to find authenticity here. So, I'm going to tell you just a little bit about my story, and we're going to dive deeper through episodes in the future because I've got lots of stories. We all have stories, and I want you to know you have a story, and I want to hear about it. So, growing up in duality, I grew up with a father who was very abusive. He was physically abusive, but much worse than that. He was psychologically abusive. He was mean. He It was just terrible, the things that he would say, the verbal abuse. My brother's 5 years younger than me, that we experienced. And coming from the person, one of the two people who's supposed to love you unconditionally and give you your foundation in life. And nobody's perfect. Don't get me wrong. I don't believe in perfection. I don't believe that anybody is going to be perfect. We're all humans, and that means we all have flaws. And, we do the best we can. Okay. So I'll give him a little bit of grace because I know that he was severely abused as a child, but you also get to make choices in your life, right? So he was abusive, he was controlling. I don't ever remember seeing him hit my She never had any bruises or anything, but he was also very psychologically abusive to her. And on the other hand, I had my mom, who was, like I already mentioned, my best friend. My mom, I loved her. But again, a flawed human being. And she did what she thought was right, trying to protect my brother and I, trying to, she would fight with my father, but the fighting was so bad. And for some reason, I always got blamed for all of it. So over time, my mom was very loving and she would tell my brother and I she loved us. However, over time, I could see now looking back that she became a little bit more, less expressive about how she felt. And she lost a bit of herself in that way. She also really compartmentalized everything. And it was really wild to see. But there was a clash of love and pain. And it was confusing. It didn't show me a loving, happy home. And I thought there was something wrong with me. And I had all those messages of you're not worthy and, things like that, that I was literally told. Kids are egocentric because that's all they know. They're just trying to survive in the world and get to know what this world is. So to have my father telling me those things, I believed it wholeheartedly. So I didn't really understand safety. I never felt safe. Belief systems are actually formed early, and that's normal. My belief systems were don't rock the boat. You don't get to choose. You don't want to be seen and heard. Hide, hide, hide. Nobody wants to hear what you have to say. You're responsible for everything. Are you surprised I became a people pleaser? Years go by. Fortunately, I got to go to college. I met my husband just before freshman year in college, and he just became my rock, my support, my eyes opening to the world. It was amazing. But through all of that, my mom was still at home and had her own journey. So before I went to college, my mom at the age of 40 became legally blind with something called wet macular degeneration. And so she started noticing at 40 years old that she had blind spots in the center vision of her eyes. And so she ended up going to an eye doctor, and they ended up saying, you have this disease. I'd never heard of it. My mother had never heard of it. Now, I want you to remember, this is 1987. I was 15 years old, and nobody really knew a whole lot about this. Now you hear about AMD, age-related macular degeneration, but the wet type is different and it's more rare, and especially at the age of 40. So she became legally blind and she was a school teacher. So fortunately, she found people that would help her. She got an assistant in her classroom and all these things. But at the age of 55, she decided she needed to retire. Back at 30, she was diagnosed with asthma. Fast forward to 55, and she's been seeing pulmonologists all this time, and she had to retire because her breathing was getting so bad. And I will say, looking back, I knew she didn't have asthma, but I didn't know I knew. She ended up retiring. I had had my first son, and she ended up in the hospital with a pneumonia and was in the hospital for 11 days. Okay, this was 2003, I believe. They didn't want you staying in the hospital, and they still don't, more than you need to. 11 days. And by the time she was getting discharged, she was told she had advanced COPD. COPD is chronic obstructive pulmonary disease. And what she was told is she went vacillated between bronchitis and emphysema. Well, let me tell you, that was a shock. My mom didn't smoke, didn't know anybody who smoked, didn't live with anybody who smoked, no friends, no family, nothing. And she was a school teacher. So, a long story that I'm sure I'll go into some other day. She ended up having a lung transplant in 2012. And that brought a whole other host of things because what they tell you when you have a lung transplant is you are exchanging one disease for another. It was medications that were wreaking havoc on her body. And she ended up in a long term, she ended up in renal failure, which is kidney failure. She had to go and have treatments for that. And she just became weaker and weaker and weaker. And through that, over years, because she retired at 55, had her lung transplant at 65, and passed at 69. It was a roller coaster. Life was a roller coaster. And I became her caretaker, even though she didn't live in my home. I took care of her. I became her advocate with the team, with any physicians, and I learned so much about grace and strength and the power of choice. Yes. So the turning point was her passing in October 13 in 2016. And what it taught me, oh my God, so much impermanence, that life, it was like a smack in the face that this life does end. Of course, we all know that. Of course, we're born into this world. And we all know that. But it was like I was 44. I just turned 44 when she passed. And it was like my mortality was right there, witnessing everything that my mom went through, how hard she fought to live, how much she wanted to be there for her family and her friends and my two sons, who she called her boys. I have goosebumps because she was fierce. The woman was so fiercely independent, even though she couldn't drive, even though she couldn't really read anymore, even though she couldn't breathe well, even though she had all these medical things. She was fierce, independent, and stubborn as all get out. And honestly, towards the end, when she had her final hospitalization, I knew that this was different. And I was able to. So it taught me about the impermanence of life. It taught me about the grace in making a decision. It taught me about having grace for other people. It taught me about things I wanted in my life. It taught me about things I didn't want in my life. And the biggest of all, choice. Because in the end, she was able to make the choice to stop her treatments. And I honored that because she had fought so hard for so long. And what really matters in life. So I watched my mom lose so much choice, though she had the final ultimate choice. And that made me determined to never give mine away again. And I'm going to tell you in every way, like I would go and exercise and I'd be like dying, sweat pouring off of me. I can't do anymore. And I would think my mom literally can't do any of this, literally couldn't do any of this. I'm going to be grateful for this moment and I'm going to push through. Of course, I don't mean if you're injured and things like that, but sometimes it's mind over matter. So, what I want to tell you is that it's time to hear some of my truth and my vulnerability here. When I was young and for a long time, I hated myself. I felt unworthy. I felt like a monster. I didn't just want to stay small, which I was told to do, but I wanted to hide. I didn't want to be noticed. I didn't want to be seen. And I'll be honest with you, there were times that I had suicidal ideation. I have been in really dark places, but I'm not trying to make you feel that. I'm trying to make you see that when you have this, there's light at the end of the tunnel. I loved being alive. I loved people. I loved the idea of this beautiful life that you could have. But I didn't believe I deserved any of it. I believed I was a monster. I called myself a beast. And the worst part is, I didn't even just say it to myself in my mind, I said it out loud to others. And it pushed people away. So I looked in the mirror and I would see my father because I do look like him. And it was really hard. But as I grew my family, I started to change a little bit, but I did have those feelings still. When I had my two sons when they were really young, I used to tell my husband when I was in a really dark place, you know what? You need to take the boys and leave me and find somebody else. Find somebody who's going to be good for you. Find somebody who's going to be a better mom for these boys because I didn't believe that I was worthy of having these beautiful boys and this beautiful life with my husband. And it was the wildest thing because I loved it so much, but I hated myself so much. And is that what I wanted? No, not at all. But I didn't believe I deserved the life I was craving. So this is where you pivot. Okay. This is where I want you to see that I started to recognize, and I did it over a long period of time. And that's why I'm doing this, is because I want you to see these things and to understand that you are amazing and you are worthy and you belong here and you should have this beautiful, full life. Our belief systems are imparted on us, they're placed on us before the age or by the age of 7 years old. And you know what? Our brain isn't even fully formed to be able to make sure that we're making the decisions we want to make until we're 25. So, can you see how helpless we are in terms of being so young and having these belief systems placed on us? So, the bullshit that we absorb from society and family and others keep us stuck. What you need to do is become aware. Okay. So it can be something simple like, I'm feeling off today. I don't feel good. It doesn't have to be physical, although sometimes that's what happens to us as our body takes on the stress and takes on how we feel, and we feel it physically. But in your gut, in your heart, in your soul, why am I feeling this way? And just ask yourself that, because awareness is that first step to choice. Once you become aware, it's like this little voice whispering in your ear, and you can't ignore it. And the harder you try, I swear, the louder it gets. So I want you to think about, what's one belief that you've carried since childhood that doesn't feel like it's truly yours? Now, this doesn't have to be some terrible belief, but one belief. Write it down. That's the beginning of seeing beyond the BS. So I'm just going to share now my excitement, because what I want you to know is, yes, I went through those dark times, but here I am now at 53 years old, thriving, actually loving myself, liking myself, loving my life. And I'm not one for toxic positivity. I don't believe in just say you feel good, just be happy. No, we have to feel what we feel, but don't live there. Don't stay in that place. Make a choice. And so when you become aware and you start making these choices and they build upon each other, it's the most amazing thing. Like, just an incredible thing. Because I can say now, going from suicidal ideation at one point in my life to I love my life. I love all the things that are happening in my life. I love the people in my life. I love learning. I love meeting people. You can do it too. I'm so excited to have you here, and I truly hope you stick around and hang out with me and hang out with my friends that I bring on here, because we've got some amazing things planned. And I want you to know that this is where we're going to have, like I said, real conversations, tools and tips that are going to help you move yourself in your life. We're going beyond the BS. We're going beyond what's placed upon us, and we're living our lives out loud, okay? We're going to have tools and tips for real happiness, real joy, and reframing stories. So, for today, I want to thank you so much for being here. If you are interested in connecting with me at all, you can check the show notes. But my website is heathermcnally.com. And on my website, I have right at the top a free limiting beliefs finder. And you can sign up for my newsletter, which is going to send weekly tips and anytime I have workshops and anytime I'm speaking and things like that, because this is my purpose in life. And my purpose in life is to help others get maybe a little bit further along faster than I did, because hopefully I can be the moment in your life, or some one of my guests can show you a moment in your life that makes you go, oh, like a light bulb moment. I do offer one-on-one coaching. And if you look on my website, I have free consultation calls that you can sign up for. My Instagram, you can find me at Heather_A_McNally. And I want you to know that this is just the beginning. We're going to go, it's going to be a wild ride. So I want to invite you to leave a comment, subscribe, and share if you feel called to do so to anybody that you think that this could be helpful for. I want to thank you so much for sharing this space with me. Wherever you are right now, I want you to know you're not alone, and you always have that power to choose differently than you are now. Until next time, I'm Heather McNally. Go live fully, freely, and unapologetically. Your life beyond BS starts right now. I'm so grateful you were here today. Remember, your peace, joy, and happiness aren't found in the BS. They're found in your choices. If this episode spoke to you, please rate, review, follow, and subscribe, and share it with a friend. For ways to connect or work with me, check the show notes or visit heathermcnally.com. Until next time, keep choosing you and keep living your life beyond BS.